Welcome, everybody. Dominic Bartola with qBotica here. Very excited to kick this webinar off. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we have people from all over the world calling in and listening in and hopefully able to watch our LinkedIn Live. And please do feel free to use that chat. Let us know where you are. And we'd love to see where you are from the world with us today. It's going to be a very insightful webinar. We have some very special guests joining us. We have some very special events coming up. We have Forward 6 with UiPath is coming up. It's a very big event. It'll be in Las Vegas. qBotica will be there. We will be there with bells on, and very excited to meet with customers and potential customers, partners, everybody, I think, in the automation space will be there. So we're happy to be sponsoring the UiPath Forward 6 in Las Vegas. We'll go ahead and kick this off with an introduction to our experts that will be on this webinar and facilitating this discussion in the next 20, 30 minutes or so. And we hope this will be very insightful for everybody. And we're joined by Huw Williams, who is our VP of Industries at qBotica, brings a wealth of knowledge and experience around contact center automation, CX, and just his wealth of experience, what he's been able to bring to qBotica as well as our clients and customers. And so I'm very excited that he's with us, and he's actually calling in from the UK. And we're also joined by Brad Beumer, and he's a customer experience and contact center automation SME at UiPath. Brad helps UiPath clients and partners envision the role of automation in their end-to-end customer experience and contact center journeys. Brad has been delivering customer experience automation and contact center solutions for over 20 years. And so we really hope you get some takeaways from today. And I'll go ahead and start this countdown. And Huw and Brad will get into their deep dive discussion. And I'll be in the background. Please feel free to ask any questions to our speakers, and hopefully they'll be able to answer them in real time. And I'll be around as well and see everybody when we're all done. So have a great webinar, and see you all in a little bit.
Thank you, Dominic. It's great to have a good conversation on this topic. It's a topic that we're seeing a huge amount of interest in, and certainly something that's been developing in our industry for quite some time. How do we introduce AI and now Gen AI into some of the conversations? And Brad, wonderful to have you here, and certainly looking forward to us unlocking some of the pointers in this conversation, and certainly how we are applying some of these in our industry. So I know you obviously have huge exposure to the automation, CX automation market. What's the type of things you're seeing? How are you kind of grappling with that huge opportunity that we're seeing in the CX space around Gen AI?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here, Huw and the qBotica team, and great to see everyone joining us from around the world. Yeah, this is a topic that, as we say, has taken oxygen out of the room, right? It's the topic that everyone wants to talk about in any conversation, any customer, partner, any kind of conversation that we have. And I think we're at the point where the clients and customers that we talk to and every day and hear from and work with, they're at a point where they're really trying to figure out, okay, we're past the hype. Now, how do we actually go out and do this? And that's the key role of automation. We may not necessarily, especially within UiPath, have the generative AI. We partner with Google, of course, and Amazon and Microsoft and OpenAI and others. What we're really looking at is how do you orchestrate an end-to-end process? And we'll talk more about that shortly. But I think that's really one of the key concerns or key areas of interest that customers are really talking about today is, okay, how do we actually go out and use this generative AI stuff that everyone's talking about in our enterprise?
It's a great point, because I think for so long we've had this kind of topic. I mean, you know this yourself, Brad, over the last decade, 2 decades, it's always been featuring in our a glossary of terms, and how does that apply certainly in CX? I think what I'm seeing, and I totally agree, there is now a timing, a moment where we're embarking on the industrialization of AI into CX. We can now actually apply it to drive value. I mean, what sort of value are you seeing? Are you seeing this in retentions? Is it in, being able to drive a better customer experience? Is it about reducing handling times? Is it all of those things?
Yeah, it's really all those things, but I think it depends on who you're talking to in the CX organization and in the customer care organization. I think if you're talking to a chief customer officer or the VP, EVP of customer care or the contact center, I think they tend to focus, what I'm seeing is they tend to focus a little bit more on customer satisfaction, customer experience, net promoter score, customer effort score, things like that. But then when you still talk to the folks that are maybe managing or supervisors or others, there's a focus on AHT. How do we improve quality? Maybe how do we just do more quality checks and scorecarding on what we're doing? And of course, that rolls up to customer satisfaction. But I think it is all those things, but it also depends on who you're talking to and speaking with, and in the industry and goals of the organization.
Absolutely. And we're seeing a lot on cultural adoption, and certainly, the concept of, when you look at some of the automation initiatives, it's, is it about replacing people? Is it about transforming the roles of those individuals? And I'm kind of often having conversations about, how do we transform the role of the contact center agent when you start to introduce AI into their role? And we'll come on to self-service, as we know, with Conversation AI shortly. But, what are you hearing? Are you seeing kind of an acceptance? Are you seeing that the automatic approval rating almost of AI entering this space?
Yeah, I do think it's funny. I chuckle sometimes when I talk to customers about this, because and others, because you may remember this. If you call centers and contact centers, everyone has always tried to push AI into them. And if you brought up AI to a contact center leader or to a chief customer officer or anyone like that, their eyes would almost roll, right in front of your face, because they just didn't believe. Maybe they'd already experienced AI, it didn't work, or they've heard from others and it didn't work. And then kind of overnight that switched, right? And then now you don't have to get over that big hurdle anymore where you're trying to convince folks that, hey, there's some advantages, there's some real stuff, there's some real there with AI. But yeah, I think what we've seen over the past 9 months, almost a year now, is really kind of switched that, and folks tend to. You don't have to do the same amount of work you used to convince leaders that it's real.
It is. It's like it's where do you apply it? Not, is this going to work for me? And I think the other interesting point that I'm seeing the same trend is, something that would be great for the future is now, very much in the, next 6 months, next 12 months of all CX, not necessarily large scale operations, but all operations. How do I start to drive more intelligence for my customers? How do I understand more on their buying habits, or how they're going to perform when they want to interact with my brand? And I think that insight is extremely lucrative for many organizations. And there's also, I'm seeing that the fear factor of many brands being left behind. And certainly when we're seeing disruptive brands entering the market who have built their capabilities bottom up and have that customer insight and are able to predict behavior and certainly be able to forecast that customer behavior, certainly is making the difference in the bottom line. Brad, I'd love to show or share a slide. I'd like to kind of debate some of the content in it and get your view on it, really, around what we're seeing in the space, and see really how this is comparing to some of your views. So just going to very quickly share a slide. But this, of course, is not about a deck. It's about us just using it as a backdrop to debate some of the content. But hopefully that's visible to you, Brad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing here, I think, keen to get this as a really a point in a moment in our history of CX and the evolution of CX, because we're seeing obviously how we've evolved from very much rule-based workflow, and this goes back to, the 90s when we were looking at call routing and we were able to prioritize some skill-based routing, and certainly moving on to obviously the initial RPA capabilities and chatbots and IDP and so on and so forth. I think what's really interesting, and this is quite a common theme that we're seeing, is organizations who are now in this middle ground, really respecting that there are this very much a changing environment, that they need to ensure that their entire IT infrastructure is able to handle large language models, or be able to tap in and utilize those. We talked about specialized AI, but there'll be a short step, as we know, to the concept of cobots or copilots or autonomous servicing, and we're seeing that already with conversational AI. Very, very successful way. And obviously the concept of knowledge workers. I know obviously UiPath are immersed in the majority of the functionality running along the bottom. What are you seeing as driving that change? Is it conversational AI? Is it communication mining? What are the key areas you're seeing as creating the inertia around that leap from rule-based to intelligent automation, Brad?
I think you highlighted it. It's rule-based. Rule-based to me usually requires someone who knows how to code, or maybe sometimes configure those rules. As to where with AI, now English is the most popular programming language. Especially with generative AI, English becomes the most popular programming language, and that's somewhat, it could be. The point is that you don't have to know how to write code. Now you could write prompts, and those prompts can be in your language of choice, right? So I think that's one of the things that's really driving this, and then of course, I think conversational AI in general, there's been this opportunity for real-time speech to text and real-time agent assistance, and then that real-time assistant being able to detect intents and what's happening in the conversation, and then when you think about that handoff on your slide. If we're detecting the intents and we're detecting what the customer wants and how the agent is responding to that, then you're able to create automations. And it's fun to think about, because you could almost envision a world where you have that real-time assistant working together with automation, so that an agent may never need to touch their keyboard or touch their mouse. They just have a conversation with the customer, and the automation and AI and the robots go off and do all the work on the agent's behalf and ultimately on the customer's behalf.
It certainly is. It is the direction that we're seeing in the travel of that particular or trend in the industry. What always appeals to me is how naturally that culture is changing. How we're seeing those devices in the home, how we are, communicating, for example, with, smart devices, both at home, in our vehicles. So why not in the workplace? Why not? Why are we still referring or defaulting to manual interaction, or even keying in information and not interacting through voice and other gestures, of course, in being able to trigger bots? How are you seeing the general, how are you seeing that culture deploying and scaling within some of your customers? Are you seeing that as a rather rapid growth? Is there still education required to inform individuals of how to use this technology? Or are we seeing that next generation who are intuitively using this technology, just picking this up, or even driving that type of interaction?
Yeah, I want to go back to, because you made a good point there around the devices that we have at home, Alexa, Siri, and Google. And we were talking about the real-time assist and the robots working together. I had an interesting conversation with someone who said, "Oh, it's like Alexa, or it's like Siri, except for work." And I said, "Yeah, you kind of look at it that way. It's that interaction between conversational AI and the real-time assist and your robots going off and doing the work. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like Alexa for work." But the uptake, I think a lot of the organizations that we work with, they may have automation already in place today, and it's still at that early kind of adoption. I guess you can't really even say adoption. It's kind of in those early phases of looking at where AI can fit into their organization. You have a lot of organizations that have board level initiatives that what's our AI strategy, and I think over the next year, as you see more of those strategies start to develop, and maybe companies place bets on any of the big vendors, whether that's Microsoft, Amazon, Google, or someone else. I think a lot of those things that you tend to see are what organizations are working through now, and I think you'll start to see the adoption increase over the next year or so. But there's definitely we definitely have conversations where there's a bit of that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that's coming up in terms of folks wanting to move faster into pilots and the POCs. Okay, what's the value? Hey, how do we prove out the security? Is this going to be compliant? If those are going to be issues, how do we work through those? I think those are some of the questions that are starting to be answered with pilots, and you might call it phase one production implementations to a small subset of users or a community in an enterprise.
And I think culture and change, and you saw it on the previous slide, it was one of the key pillars there around, being able to execute essentially against and scale that kind of technology. The other axis that we're seeing often is around systems integration, that usual, the typical activity that takes time, that drives some of the challenges and costs associated with implementation. How are you seeing, the obviously low-code environments like UiPath, out-of-the-box connectors, marketplace capabilities, and you're seeing this, I'm assuming, is driving that pace? It's speeding up implementation and scale?
Yeah, and it's funny, you're going back to the previous question. This is really where we see customers and partners coming to UiPath, coming to us, especially in the contact center and for customer experiences. But maybe they have piloted, I'm just going to use OpenAI. Maybe they piloted OpenAI in the enterprise, and they've gone through and they figured out how to do scorecarding. But what happens once you've done that QA scorecarding? It has to go somewhere, and you also have to feed information into that scorecard, which is where UiPath fits in. We can go and grab that information, feed it into that generative AI model. You'll get some output, and then that output needs to go somewhere. It needs to be integrated into something. That's that end-to-end orchestrated process that we're starting to see more and more customers really looking at, figuring out, okay, how do we use generative AI and integrate what we're getting out of it together with our maybe modern systems that have APIs, and maybe not so modern systems that you still access through a terminal emulator or directly input into a database or something else.
And I guess having that automation layer, driving that ecosystem, takes away some of those typical challenges without APIs to be able to still emulate that human, to still be able to execute that request. I'm guessing you're removing a number of pockets of failure by creating a seamless automation layer across the enterprise. I want to kind of change tracks a little bit, Brad, because we obviously are also and have been focusing on self-service for so long, in the form of chatbots, in the form of IVRs, and auto attendants, and a variety of different technologies. We're obviously seeing some real sophistication with conversational AI, and now, of course, that conversational AI platform that's able to intuitively learn and drive a much more well-rounded and wholesome conversation with the customer. What's your view on when you fuse together what was traditional RPA and conversational AI? What kind of benefits are you seeing in the market today? Are you kind of seeing that as an obvious step forward? Are there other areas that we should be considering? What's your initial or your instinct? What's your instinct telling you on the introduction of CAI into our industry?
Yeah, I think there are a few areas where automation helps out. So one is in the discovery area. So we have customers that haven't really that before didn't really achieve the kind of deflection or containment rates that they were looking for when they rolled out chatbot, when they rolled out conversational AI solution. We were able to use they were able to use our mining products, like process mining, for example, to figure out where along the customer journey issues were occurring, where were they not able to self-serve, and then ultimately be able to go and say, okay, how do we fix that? And then that goes to the automate. section, right? Okay, how do we figured out what we need to fix? Now, how do we go and fix it? And usually the problem is, okay, we're not integrated into this system, or that process requires a person today because we have to go through these steps, and those steps are too complex to put into an API. Well, of course, that's the gap that we can help fill there. So, and we see, and then also you get the analytics out of that as well. So if if those automations aren't working as expected, you can go back and fine tune them. Getting the test results and information out of that too can help you go back and fine tune. But that's kind of what we're seeing, and we have customers that have really gone through that 3-step process there to help them improve ultimately, or get to the goal that they're trying to achieve with conversational AI, which is to help customers self-serve.
And I guess we're seeing, I'm certainly seeing this in conversations I'm having at various levels with customers and with large-scale organizations. It's, will my customers want to be contained or managed in a conversational, well, do they want to speak to a bot? We've moved on from what was essentially a glorified FAQ, the customers who are getting lost in very templated responses. I guess we're now seeing an opportunity to really drive some quite rich conversations. Off the cuff remark here, Brad, do you think conversational AI will ever drive real compelling sales calls, or do we just see conversational AI as very much removing much more low value, simple tasks?
Yeah, I think the high volume, low complexity requests are definitely, it's definitely a hot area for conversational AI. Now, if we go to the next level up, which may be medium complexity requests, and maybe medium or high volume, that's an area where I think conversational AI can also start to help. And that's where, traditionally they haven't been as, where conversational AI hasn't been as helpful there, because of some of those reasons I highlighted earlier. Maybe lack of integration, maybe the process is too complex, maybe it's going to take too long to build something. But I think there's an opportunity there. I still think, at least for the foreseeable future, there are just going to be some interactions that are going to require a human to human, a person to person, that touch and feel. And it may be sales, more complex sales interactions may still require that person to person human interaction. But I think just about any enterprise is going to have some kind of call type, interaction type, whatever it might be, that or demographic, might be a demographic where people are just going to want to talk to people.
So the agent is the human in the loop in the future, or in the near future.
Yeah. And for those, that's great. We can do that real time assist thing that we were talking about earlier.
I think the other angle here is when you look at that role of that contact center agent. We've taken the role from what was essentially very administrative, very document or system, lots of systems, lots of processes. We've simplified that. We know as an industry we've optimized that to a certain extent. Now the next level is, how do you drive deeper intelligence into that agent conversation? We've talked about, in this case, obviously human in the loop. That's a great way. So where that human and bot will work side by side, where conversational AI or other formats of AI would be able to deflect those simple contacts. When you look at the role of the agent, what do we think? Are we seeing the role of the agent to be more of a knowledge worker, much more complex task, or will the role of the agent become much more multi-skilled, much more broader, simplified tasks, but carry out more work? What's your view on that? I'm seeing both models depending on the industry. Are you seeing the same?
Yeah, and there are some new models emerging as well in some of our recent shadowing sessions with customers, where agents have almost turned into, I would say, counselors or psychologists on phone calls, because a lot of those high volume, low complexity calls or interactions, I should say, are now automated, right? So you're getting more of the more complex conversations that require that deeper level of empathy, that require the deeper level of soft skills. But I still think there's a role for, you mentioned knowledge workers. There's a role for generative AI and automation there, because who wants who wants to wait, 2, 3, 4 minutes on hold while an agent goes through and looks up information or tries to find the right information in a knowledge article or a 50-page PDF or whatever it might be. Well, you can plug all that into a large language, vectorize it and plug it into a large language model and have a quick search box on your window where you type in the customer's question, or maybe the question automatically comes there if you have real-time assist, and the answer is right there in front of them, just like you get with ChatGPT or Bard or Bing now, right?
Precisely. And it's joining those dots together to ensure that that data is at the fingertips of that agent and being pushed to them, rather than them having to search and pull that information. So there's some great stuff here, and I know we've got many people joining us from around the world. It's great to kind of see everybody come together on this topic, a very thought-provoking topic, and we're very excited to be able to discuss this. I think the question on everyone's lips here, Brad, is, so where do I start and how do I scale this? What are you seeing? What's the first few steps you would take when taking a typical contact center or customer experience environment? Where do you start to introduce this type of capability?
Yeah, well, I still think, I always come back to the business case, the business value side of things. Where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? I think that's what gets buy-in helps get buy-in across an organization. So I would start there, looking at what are those interaction types. I think we tend to look at which interaction types have the highest volume, but that may not necessarily be the case, right? It may be those interaction types that result in a low post-call or post-email or post-chat survey or lower NPS. How can we potentially use AI and automation to help improve those conversations? It may be those interactions that result in errors or compliance issues. How do you improve those to maybe have a significant impact on your organization? But I think it all starts with the business case, and then I think scaling. This is the interesting part where I think whether it's all the AI and automation capabilities that are there are also available in the cloud, right? So the cloud, you can scale up and scale down as you need. So I think there's a big opportunity here for the cloud. I know a lot of organizations are kind of a little hesitant about using the cloud, especially when it comes to generative AI. But I think there's that opportunity. But then also, scaling through partners, right? I think you got to have the knowledge, the expertise to actually go out and do this, and having a partner that's there beside you that can provide that feedback on whether the cloud is the right choice. What are those what are the best interactions that you want to go after for these solutions?
You're right, Brad. I think that's then certainly one of the areas that we're supporting with, and enjoying the great relationship that we have together is, yes, of course, automation and UiPath is at the core of that transformation. That's a given. We've seen that deliver some huge success. But how do you orchestrate the other technologies around the edges? Certainly the CCaaS platforms, conversational AI platforms, and other legacy or technical debt that sits within the business today that's already been invested in or doesn't necessarily reach its end of life for another 2-3 years. How do you orchestrate that? And of course, that's some of the areas that we're working on, as together in being able to deliver that enterprise ecosystem, CX enterprise ecosystem, specifically focusing on CX automation. I think the other area I just wanted to briefly touch on, I'm seeing this often, is being able to generate ideas bottom up. We absolutely still hold so much knowledge with the contact center agents. Yes, of course, this is documented in standard operating procedures and knowledge bases, but the data and the experience that's held within even mid experienced contact center agents is vast, and unlocking that will drive a considerable value. So one of the other areas that we're seeing some great success is being able to take those ideas bottom up, and of course use Automation Hub to be able to categorize, classify, and prioritize them, and then of course to be able to drive those into automation opportunities. So I imagine you're still seeing lots of wonderful ideas coming bottom up from many of your contact center or customer experience environments as well.
Absolutely. I love going out and shadowing agents because we always get great ideas from agents, from the managers, from the team leads, supervisors, and everyone else that, they're doing this every day. So, they it can be very creative in terms of the ideas that can come up in those sessions.
No, it's fantastic. We could talk all day on this. We know this, and we have done, and we will continue to do so. And obviously, it's an evolving topic. It's changing. Even daily, we're seeing new information and new ideas coming out. Brad, it's been a real pleasure spending time with you today, as always. And thank you for sharing some of your ideas, your vision, and certainly some of the opportunities that can be enjoyed in automating and certainly introducing AI to CX. So with that, we shall wrap and certainly hand back. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Wow, what a great discussion. Thank you very much, Huw and Brad, for your time and your energy, your experience in today's discussion. I thought it was very insightful. Hopefully all of our viewers and participants were able to capture some great information around your discussion, and we'll be hopefully connecting with some of you, and we were able to answer some of your questions. Please do feel free to connect with us at info@qbotica.com. I will go ahead and put some emails in the chat, and you can also email me or anybody at qBotica if you have any questions around contact center automation, generative AI, conversational AI, some very cutting edge, exciting things happening in this space. So we're just really happy and lucky and excited to be a part of this. So you will also be able to see us at UiPath's major annual event, Forward 6, coming up around the corner in Las Vegas. So we will be there. We will have bells on. We will have special prizes. And we're really looking forward to connecting with customers, UiPath, partners, everybody there, really in the forefront on the cutting edge of automation. We'll be there. So we're excited to be sponsoring that event as well. So please do feel free to share this webinar as well with anybody in your circles. Okay, so you can share this. There should be a link once this is over. And we look forward to connecting with some of you after this webinar and seeing some of you in Las Vegas at Forward 6. Take care, everybody. Thank you.